Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to part 1 of this build series, rebuild series for my 2007 Honda CBR1000RR. The first thing that we're going to be doing on this bike is getting it completely stripped down, taking all the fairings off so that we can get working on it mechanically. And in today's video, I will be doing the valve clearance check to make sure everything's in spec, and I'll also be checking the cam chain and the cam chain tensioner to see if I have to replace the tensioner. Hopefully I don't have to. But we'll see what happens when we strip it down and get in there. Hopefully everything's fine and doesn't have to be replaced. And hopefully the valves are still within spec and I don't have to get any shims. But if they are out of spec, I'll order some shims and get them replaced in this video as well too. But without further ado, I'm gonna start breaking down the bike now. All right guys, so as you can see, I got all the fairings off the bike. Every single piece of plastic for the most part is gone now. So this is a good base to start working from. I also just took the bike outside and gave it a nice wash, a good clean. I tried to cover up most of the plastic connectors so I didn't get water stuck anywhere. Did it over there on this side, and then back there all the battery cables and my power commander is hooked up. I took that one off now. I'm gonna take this one off, and then I'm going to get started on breaking the bike down more so that I can do the valve clearance check. I'm gonna start by taking off the tank here, and I'll pull you guys in closer so you can get a better look. Try to set it up as best as I can so you can see exactly what I'm doing over here. So I was just taking the tank off, and there's one thing I want to show you guys real quick. So the tank, to lift this up, is just, there's 2 bolts, one right here and then one on the other side in the same spot, and then it just pivots right back here, right through here. So I was just lifting this up and I noticed this immediately. So it looks like, if you can see right here, there's a breather hose that comes off the bottom of the tank and then goes out through here in the side and then also through here. So it's not actually a fuel line. I believe it's just a breather hose, but as you can see, I guess when someone closed this last time, they didn't make sure that this was being cleared properly, and it looks like it was just sitting folded on itself for a while. So it's got a good pinch there, and it looks pretty broken, as you can see right here. And this is just the first time of me pulling it up, so I'm not sure how much it affects the gas flow or anything, but I'm going to order a new one of these just to make sure everything's fine. So I got a fresh one in there, but I'm glad I doing all this work and I caught that, so that's good. Yeah, so just wanted to show you guys that real quick. I literally just opened the bike up and already finding issues. So I'll zoom out and then I'll let you guys get a better look at me taking the tank off fully and then breaking everything else down. Also, one more thing before I start, for anyone following along, I just want to preface this by saying I don't know really what I'm doing to an exact science. This is the first time I'm doing this, checking the valves on this bike and taking it apart to this extent. So I'm learning as I'm going personally, and I'm just posting this video to help anyone, I guess, see any of the mistakes I make. Don't take my word as law. I'm learning. I'm still learning what I'm doing, so take everything I do with a grain of salt, I guess. This is my best tool that I have right now. This is the full 2004-2007 service manual, Honda service manual for this bike. And it's pretty much got everything I need to know about taking the bike apart and servicing everything and putting it back together. So this is my reference for everything I'm doing. If you don't have one of these, I recommend getting one. Or if you don't have one, don't want to get one, you can always just Google stuff. A lot of people will post everything or watch other YouTube videos. People that know what they're doing will post everything and tell you all the torque specs for everything and in the exact sequence to take everything apart and put it back together. But if you feel like it, I recommend getting one of these books. I have one of these for every car I own, and they're super helpful. But yeah, with that out the way, I'm going to start taking off the tank now. So first things first, apparently this thing hanging off down here that I just showed you is called the fuel tank drain hose, and it wants me to disconnect this from here before I lift up the tank again and take it off. So that's done. All right, next step, it wants us to support the tank not like that. All right, to prop the tank up, it said slide something through these holes here, but I don't have anything long enough and small enough to do that. So I'm gonna just put this extension underneath it through both sides, and now that's standing up by itself. Disconnecting the fuel pump unit. Just gotta play with it a little bit, but it's disconnected. All right, this one might be a little hard to see, but I'm going to be disconnecting the drain hose, which is this one. It's a little rusty, I'm gonna have to check that out too. This is drain hose, and also the breather valve, which is this one, not this bigger one, this one underneath it. So I'm gonna try to pop that off as well. Now those two are off. All right, the next step is disconnecting the fuel hose, which is right here, and removing the banjo bolt, which is right here. The book called for covering this nut with a shop rag, I guess to prevent anything sparking, just to be safe when we're taking it off, so I'm gonna do that. And this is an 18 mil that I find is fitting on here. So I'm just gonna pop this loose. I'm gonna turn this into a breaker bar real quick. There we go. Oh yeah, so that was on there pretty tight. I had to use the handle to my jack to get it broken loose. So I'm hoping, my fuel tank is pretty empty. I'm hoping that this doesn't make too big of a mess. I have some rags down here just in case. I'm just gonna loosen this slowly and try to catch anything that's falling out of here. Some stuff coming out, not too much. All right, yeah, we got a little bit of fuel that dripped down, not too much, so that's good. Definitely recommend doing this while your tank is relatively empty. Mine had the gas light on, so I thought it would be fine. Did spill some, but I think it's okay. All right, so there's that banjo bolt and the two crush washers that were on it. And then this is the actual fuel line itself. I'll try to move that out the way over here. And now there is a hole at the bottom of the tank, so if there's any more fuel in there, if I tip this back over, it will start spilling out. So I'll try to keep this propped up on my extension here, check if there's anything spilling out. I think it's fine. So now I can move on to actually taking off the last two bolts that are holding the tank onto the bike. Two 10 mils on either side. All right, so now we got the tank off. Again, if you have gas in your tank, it's a hole in it now. So I'm gonna try to drain all that and then probably inspect this at some point later to see if everything inside is fine. I see a little bit of rust on these spouts here, and it actually looks like it's blocked up a little bit. So I'm gonna clean that out and inspect it and see if I need to do any rust treatment in here, but that'll be a separate project. And also for the time being, I'm just going to plug this banjo bolt with a cloth, just to make sure no debris gets in there. And also, I'm going to put back the screws that I just took off that was holding the tank together or onto the bike. I'm going to screw them back onto the tank so I don't lose them. Now I'm going to drain the coolant. I'm going to pop this cap off. Alright, I'm going to remove the ECM now. Just two Phillips head screws holding it on here. Move those out the way, and then to remove this housing for the air cleaners, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips head screws. Looks like someone tried to rewrap this with electrical wire, but the coating on these wires are breaking. I don't know if you can see that there. I'll have to fix those. Move this out the way. And we can see the air cleaners here. I'm not sure what brand these are. I'll have to look up to see what that part number is, but to see if they're washable or not. But these are super dirty on the inside. Let me show you. The outside is pretty grimy as well, but then also on the inside there's a lot of grime and just dirt that you can see. So I'll probably be getting brand new ones of these. The book was saying that there's supposed to be some type of plastic piece with screws attached to here and here, but I don't see any. It looks like someone's been inside this engine. This wrap doesn't look like it's from the factory, especially this part peeling off. So I'm not sure what's up with that, but I'll probably just go through and inspect everything, make sure everything's fine. So those are missing. Probably don't need them. I'll see if I have to replace them. I just have to take off the injector base that's being held on by these couple of nuts here. Now that this is loose, I can move it out of the way. And then I'm gonna remove these covers on the side of here. Looks like someone accidentally screwed the cover onto there, so I'll have to loosen that first. So for the rest of the housing, it's a couple of screws you gotta take off here too. All right, now I'm going to remove these air funnels and then the air cleaner housing itself. Wow. I'm gonna bring this off to show you guys real quick. Looks like someone previously stripped the crap out of that screw in there, so I'm gonna try to get this off. Hopefully it doesn't give me a lot of trouble. All right, so I'm gonna try to hammer this onto there and see if I can get it broken. All right, I think it's grabbing. Hopefully it's enough. Nope. All right, guys, I just got super lucky. I was able to get this screw out. Let me take it out here so you can see what this looks like. I was able to get this out. This is the one that was stuck in there. As you can see, it was pretty badly messed up. So basically I was just able to use a flathead screwdriver that was the perfect size that started to grab, and luckily the threads weren't in there too tight, and I was able to twist it off. So that just saved me a big headache. So that's great. And before I remove this housing, I'm going to just stuff some shop towels into these holes here so I don't get any debris that's falling down in there. Anything I don't want to be in there into the engine. That would be very bad. So I'm just going to plug these up. All right, now I'm going to take off the housing, and it's these 6 bolts here. Now if this is loose, I can remove this air suction hose, what the book calls it, and then the crankcase breather hose, which is this one over here. This hose is cracking a little bit, nothing crazy though, the rest of it looks fine. All right, now we're going to be taking off the throttle body assembly. So this whole section here, and we're going to start by removing some of these wires and everything. Now I'm going to disconnect the fuel rail. Some more paper towels to catch any leaks or anything. 17 mil wrench. Wow. I just realized I didn't really have to take this end off because it's just connected to this end over here, which we already disconnected from the gas tank. So that's right though. Just get this out the way at least. And then there's one vacuum hose that has to be removed from right here. That came right off. Pull that to the side. And then there's also more connector right here that needs to be disconnected. And that should have been the last thing. So now there are these 4 clamps that we should be able to disconnect or loosen, and then we'll be able to pull the whole thing off. You kind of see this one from this angle. That's the screw for it right there, and that's the clamp. So there's one for each of these, so there's 4 other screws that we have to loosen up, and we can pull this whole thing off. And almost forgot, we also have to loosen these throttle cables from here. There's one, and there's the second one. Now we should be able to slide those out. That one's a little difficult to get to. I'm gonna see if I can pull these off and then disconnect it. So these will be a little tough. Just gotta rock them back and forth and they'll pop out like that. If everything was removed correctly. Oh yeah, 2 more things I forgot, hold on. So there are 2 coolant lines right here, and right on the other side of here. So I got to loosen these up so that they can slide off. All right, I had to struggle with those quite a bit, but they eventually came loose. They're coolant hoses, so there's a little bit of corrosion stuff around there, but eventually got them out. Now I should be able to pop this off. And then this front cable wraps around behind this part. It disconnects right there. There we go. So now this whole assembly is free of the bike. All right, now that that throttle body assembly is off and out of the way, we can continue making our way towards this valve cover and taking that off so we can do our inspection. I did see a little bit of debris, some of this dirt that fell into the cylinder. So I'll try to clean that out as best as I can. Just be aware. Probably should always blow out some compressed air around it before you take off the throttle body so nothing falls in like that. I forgot to do it, so I'll have to try to clean it up as best as I can. But I'm gonna keep removing parts until we can get this valve cover off. All right, guys, so it's been a couple days since I took everything apart and I was taking the throttle body off, and then you saw me mention that I dropped some debris down into the intakes here. So to get this cleaned out, I basically just looked up online to see what the best thing was to do. And what everyone was saying was to just take your shop vac like this. Basically, I've just duct taped some 1/4 inch inner diameter tube onto it. And when I turn on, it's getting some suction at this end. So I'm going to stick that in there and then trying to clean that out as best as I can. I also bought this borescope off Amazon. So I'm going to see if I can stick it in there to get a better view and actually record a video of the debris that fell in there, and hopefully record me sucking it out with the vacuum. All right, well, I just finished cleaning that out, and you can see it worked pretty well. It sucked up a little bit of oil residue that was in there, and also some other grime that was built up on there, and then mainly the little pieces of yellow flakes that I saw that had fallen in or on top of the valves from when I took off the throttle body. So that was the main thing I was worried about. It looks fine now, nice and clean, so I'm going to go ahead and put some paper towels in there and then probably some duct tape over it to keep anything else from falling in there. Next step to take this off, there are 2 Phillips head screws right here and one on the opposite side. Next we could take off the breather hose here. After I get this off, I'm going to put that back on just so I know exactly where it goes. Then next we're going to remove this pair air hose solenoid. And then to get this air funnel out the way, it's connected to another piece up in the front over here. Let me bring you around. See, when I move this around here, you can see this part up here moving, and then it's these 2 screws right here you want to loosen up, and then these 2 parts will come apart. And before this will come all the way off, there's this little tab you got to pull to disconnect it after you got the screws taken off, and then that should be free. Yep, there we go. All right, so I've been messing with this thing trying to get it out, and it seems like it slides in this way towards the frame, and it's supposed to slide out towards the front wheel. If you can see this piece right here is they come down and block it against the radiator, so I'm guessing I don't see any other way to take this out without unscrewing this top radiator support on both sides and dropping this down a little bit and then taking it off. So that's what I'm going to try. I'm going to try to loosen these up, drop this down a little bit, and then slide this piece out. And as I'm taking this bike apart, it's pretty crazy how many, I guess it's not crazy, it's an old bike, but how many screws are missing. So like this one on the other side for the radiator support is missing a screw. And then also for this airbox thing, there's supposed to be 2 screws here, a screw here and on the other side. Those are both missing. And I think there's another screw. Well, I had to order the other screw that was stripped earlier in the video. But yeah, I'm just finding some parts that are missing and stuff. So I've been taking note, and I'm going to keep ordering these as I go and as I keep finding things that are missing and piecing it back together so it's 100% all there. All right, there we go. Now that's officially out. It's a pretty interesting design for that one. I thought it would just slide up through the frame, but I guess not. It's kind of I imagine it'll be a tight squeeze to get it back in there, but I might just completely take off the radiator whenever actually the coolant started to drain, so I guess I could just probably take this off eventually, and then it'll be easier to slide it back in there. But yeah, that's how you take off that air funnel. All right, guys, we are nearly at the finish line. We can see the valve cover here. Had to take off all that crap just to get to this. So now the last few pieces to take off are these two tubes. We're gonna get them out the way. I'm also going to just plug them back into this solenoid. Again, just to keep everything together so I don't lose it. And then last but not least, we're going to disconnect the 4 ignition coils. Now we could finally pop off the cylinder head bolts. So it's gonna be 1, 2 back here, 3 in the middle, and then 4 on this left side over here. These are all 10 mils, kind of hard to reach, so I got my smaller socket. Sorry, I'm excited, getting ahead of myself a little bit. Forgot to actually pop out the ignition coils, so I'll take those out now. All right, ignition coils are out now. They should be able to slide out. All right, so this was a little tight in here. I was having some trouble getting it out, but I realized if you took off the rectifier plate, or the plate holding the rectifier on, then you could, gives you more room to slide it left, and then the right side can pop out this way. I couldn't really find any other way to get it off, but finally, after all that, we have the valve cover taken off. And before I start all this, I also ordered a new gasket for this as well. All right, so now we're at the point to where we can actually perform the service. We have access to the cam lobes, and we can stick our feeler gauges in there and check the spacing. But for tonight, it's getting pretty late. I'm about to eat dinner, so I'm going to just put the valve cover back on just so nothing, no dirt or debris falls into any of the stuff up here, and keep everything clean. And then tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to take it back off again and then actually perform the service and check the clearances. All right, never mind. That valve cover is super annoying to get in and out of that space for some reason. Just gonna cover this with some plastic for the time being. Try to look up an easier way to get it in and out. All right, guys, so I am back in the garage next day, ready to actually check the valve clearances. So as you can see, I just draped a plastic bag over this and covered it with some of these cloths, just so nothing fell in there or got anything dirty. So before I take this off and do the service, I am going to clean the frame around here and like under here. As you can see, it's pretty dirty. I don't want any debris falling off. There's like some of this old foam with a bunch of stuff on it. I'm probably just gonna rip this off, clean that off, and replace that later with some new foam. Yeah, it's got a lot of dirt and debris. I don't want any of that falling into the engine while I'm doing the service. So I'm gonna pull all that off, spray it down with some degreaser, and rub with some with the brush, and then dry with some cloths. So I'm gonna do that real quick and then jump into the service. All right, I cleaned all the dirt and debris from around this area, so hopefully we should be fine from anything falling in there. So now I'm going to take this cover off. All right, switch to the overhead, so now you gotta kind of have a better view. So now you can see we have access to all of the cam lobes and where they make contact down here. So that's exactly where we're going to be making our measurements. So that's why we had to take all this stuff apart. But now the only step we have to do before we actually make any measurements, there's a sequence to which valves and which cam lobes you have to measure first and what orientation the engine is in. So we have to make sure every cylinder, I think it's like top to center, but I'm going to double check with the book real quick. I will share with you guys the exact timing the cams have to be in for the exact lobe that you're going to be measuring. All right, first things first. So we're going to have to, in order to set the timing, we're going to have to remove the timing hole cap, which is this part right here. That's all scratched up. I actually ordered a new one of these. And it looks like that is about a 18 mil. A little big. 17 maybe. Perfect. I'm gonna crack that off. It's on there a little tight. Here we go. It's on there really tight. All right, so there's that. There's also an O-ring, I believe, right here. Yep, it's kind of stuck on there. I'll leave that on there. I ordered a new cap and a new O-ring, so I'll replace both those. But for this service, you don't have to really worry about that. You could order a new O-ring if you think that yours is going to be messed up. This one looks too fine. I've never experienced any problems leaking around here, so it should be okay. If you didn't want to order it, just take your cap off and throw it back on whenever you're done. But this is the bolt that we need access to, so this is going to allow us to spin the crankshaft and get the engine in the proper timing location. That looks like a 14 mil first try. So that's what we're going to use to spin the crankshaft around. And the book says we're going to spin this clockwise. Let me double check that. All right, so I'm going to get my flashlight so I can see in here. So I'll bring you guys in closer for a second. But there is a timing notch on the crankcase right here. My finger is pointing to. And then inside here in the crankshaft position sensor rotor, there is a marking that says TIIF. And then the book says that we're going to line up the T mark that's currently right over here with this notch that's right here. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll bring you guys in closer to see what that looks like. And also spinning this clockwise. Let me get a bigger wrench for this. All right, got my 1/2-inch wrench to make that a little easier. So now I'm going to spin this clockwise. Actually, one thing I forgot, we have to take the spark plugs out. All right, I removed the spark plugs. Now that should be a lot easier to turn the engine since this is not building any compression anymore. So let me line that mark up now. All right, that looks pretty spot on to me. All right, so if I bring you guys in here, as you can see, there's that notch I was talking about right there. And then you can also see if I get the light up there, hold on. You should be able to see the TIF right there, so you can see the T is lined up with that notch right there. This notch right there. So as you can see, that's pretty spot on, but that is not the only requirement to start this. So that T has to be lined up with the notch, and then if we look at the cam sprockets, you can see there are two notches right there. The one on the left, it says, if we'll focus up, the one on the left says intake, and the one on the right says exhaust. Those two right there that are pointing at each other. So those actually need, let me show you guys. So I'm talking about these two right there and right there, not that one. So these two that are pointing at each other, while that T is lined up with the notch down there, the manual actually says that those two are supposed to be pointing towards the outside of the engine on their respective sides. So if they're not right here, you have to turn the crankshaft a full 360 degrees, and then they should be facing outward. So I'm gonna do that right now and then show you what it should look like. So I'm gonna spin this basically all the way around until that T is lined up again with that notch. And now if I bring you over here, you'll see what I was talking about. So that mark is now lined up horizontally with the cylinder head surface on the intake side, and also the exhaust side is a little hard to see because it's all the way over there, but it's the same over there where that exhaust notch is lined up horizontally on that side, and now they are both pointing out. So that is the first step before we measure the first clearances. Okay, so with the engine timed to the position that we just set it to, the first measurements we're going to be taking are of the intake valves for cylinders 1 and 3. So we have cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to be doing 1 and 3 on the intake side. So this is the back of the bike facing the front. And the specs for these, so it says it's supposed to be 0.16 millimeters plus or minus 3 millimeters. So within 0.13 millimeters and 0.19 millimeters. So I'm going to take my feeler gauges here. I'm going to start with 0.18 mils. So I'm going to stick that in here, see what it feels like. So I can't get that, I can't fit that all the way in. So I'm going to drop it down to 0.15. So this is 15 mils. And this actually slides in perfectly on both sides. So that feels good. So that means we're like 0.01 mil off the spec, which is perfect. Just a sanity check, I'm gonna do 0.18 again. As you can see, it's tight, doesn't fit. And then 0.15 fits perfectly. It'll go all the way in, a little snug. And then the next one I have is 0.13, and that fits loosely. So looks like 0.15 is about right. So this one is within spec. The intake valve for cylinder 1 is within spec. And so while I'm making these measurements, I'm going to actually write down the spec of every single one. So let me jot that down real quick. And now I'm going to try for the intake valve on cylinder 3. So I'm going to start with 18 again. That's also tight, doesn't fit on either of those. And now we're at 0.15. And same thing, 0.15 feels like it fits perfectly. So if 18 doesn't fit, 15 does fit. This might be like in between. And if I check with 13 mil, that is pretty loose. And 15 is perfectly snug. So these are about the same for cylinder 1 and 3. I'm gonna write that down. All right, so for the next setting, we're going to be checking the exhaust valves on cylinders 2 and 4. And so the timing for this one is we want this mark right here, the one at the top. You want that mark to be facing straight up, as you can see. And so basically from the last position we had, it was a 180-degree rotation or half a turn. So that T mark went from right there, 180 degrees right there, and now that mark at the top should be facing straight up. So now we can check the valve clearance for exhaust valves 2 and 4 at that position we just set it to. So the spec for these are, they're supposed to be 0.30 mils plus or minus 3, so within 0.27 and 0.33. So I'm going to start at 0.30. See what we have here. So I'm going to start at 0.33 and see what this feels like. For these ones, I'm actually going to come down through this way since the radio and everything is gone. It's pretty easy to access over here. So this is 0.33 mils. That's tight, it won't fit at all. Same over here. So let me drop it down to 0.30. 0.30 is also very tight on both sides. So let me drop it down to 28. 28 is also very tight. So it looks like the exhaust valve on cylinder 2 might be out of spec actually. So let me drop it down, see how far I have to go down to see what the spec is, see what the clearance is. Take it at 25. 25 is tight. 23. All right, so we're at 0.20 and that fits very snug. So the spec on this one is 0.20, so we're 10 mils out of spec, which is not good. That's going to need adjustment. Checking again, 0.23 actually fits in there very snugly. Yeah, it's pretty tight, but it does fit. So probably 0.23, maybe 0.22. All right, 0.23 fits in there. So that's 0.23, that's out of spec. So the exhaust for cylinder 2 is 0.23 on both sides, left and right. So I'm just going to repeat the same process for cylinder 4. All right, so for the exhaust side on cylinder 4, the left lobe is at 0.25 mils and the right is at 0.23. So these are both out of spec. 23 a little bit more than 25. It's supposed to be at minimum 0.27. So those will need to be adjusted as well. Okay, so after another 180-degree rotation of the crankshaft. The T mark should be back in line with that notch on the crankcase like it was the first time, but instead of those, the intake and exhaust marks pointing out on that side of the engine, they point inwards now, and on that position we can measure cylinders 2 and 4 on the intake side. And the clearance for these are, again, supposed to be 0.16 plus or minus 3 mils, so between 0.13 and 0.19 on both these. Okay, so finally for the intake side on cylinder 2, these are way out of spec. These are at 0.06 mils right now, and the minimum is 0.13. So there's barely any clearance on these ones, so that definitely has to be adjusted. Okay, so after turning the crankshaft, yet again another 180 degrees. So now instead of the T pointing to the notch in the crank, that line is pointing straight up like we did the second time. So when the motor is set to that position, we can now measure the clearance for the exhaust valves on cylinders 1 and 3. And again, on the exhaust side, the spec we're looking for is between 0.27 and 0.33 mils. Exhaust side for cylinder 3 is 0.28 mils on both sides. So that's all of them, but I just realized I was trolling on, I forget, I didn't even know. I think one of these, the ones I said it was like super out of spec, was like 0.06 mils, which doesn't make any sense. But then I realized I was looking at the measurements, or the marking on this set is, they're both on the same side. So I was like getting, I was rushing and getting it mixed up. So I was looking at, I think I was accidentally reading 0.006 inches instead of looking at the 0.15 mil mark. So yeah, I was just rushing and reading the wrong numbers. So I'm gonna just run back through real quick, reset the timing, and just run and double check all my measurements from on all the cylinders on both the intake and the exhaust side. All right, so after double checking all of my numbers, the final results are in. I got them written down in these little turnip onion things, whatever these are, still sticky notes. So for the intake side, all of the valves are in spec. 0.17 to 0.15 was the biggest difference. Sorry, 0.18, 0.15 was the biggest difference. So the spec on these are supposed to be 0.16. A lot of them were on the dot. 2 and 4 were on the dot, and then for cylinders 1 and 3, the highest was 0.18, which is still in spec. Highest is 0.19, and then the lowest is 0.13. The lowest it can be is 0.13, and the lowest I had was on cylinder 1 was 0.15. So all these on the intake side are good. No need to adjust anything there. For the exhaust side, however, these were all out of spec. So the spec on these, it's supposed to be at 30 mils plus or minus 3 mils. So either 27 to 33. These were all under, so not enough clearance. They were all pretty close to each other actually. So 0.21, 0.22, and then 0.21 for all those. So the lowest it was supposed to be was 0.27, and they're all a couple mils under that. So they'll all need to be adjusted. So I'm going to have to order a few different shims to get these all back into spec and get this service completed. So guys, there you have it. That is how you tear down the bike to do a valve clearance inspection on a 2006 or 2007 Honda CBR1000RR or a Honda Fireblade. As you probably noticed throughout the video, I did tear the bike down way more than you need to just to perform the valve inspection. That's because, as I said earlier, I'm doing a complete rebuild on this bike, so I'm going through and tearing most of it down, cleaning everything I can, doing these inspections, and I'm going to be getting all the nooks and crannies and cleaning everything up, taking most stuff off, inspecting everything, and then rebuilding it back up from there. If you came here just for the valve clearance inspection, you don't really need to obviously take off all the fairings, probably just the side fairings. You just need to drop the radiator down a little bit. You don't need to take the whole thing off. You don't have to take off like the secondary injectors and everything. You can leave that on there. You just really need to get to the valve cover, take that off, so you can get to the cam lobes and check the clearances there. As long as you have enough space for that, you should be fine. Again, I took it down a little bit more because I'm doing more with the bike, but I think at the very least, this will give you an idea of what you need to do to get in here. to this point and check the clearances. So for me, because I have some out of spec on the exhaust side, this is just step one. So now I need to actually order those shims, and I'll have to take that exhaust cam out and replace all of the shims underneath that exhaust cam to get those valves back in spec and hopefully get the bike running good as new again. Okay, so the first step to taking out the camshaft so that we can get to the valve lifters, the book wants us to remove this camshaft position sensor, which is on the left side of the engine, right here up near the exhaust manifold right here. This is just a 10mm bolt holding it on. Now I'm going to spin the engine back to top dead center again using the marks I showed you earlier in the video. Now this thing here is the cam chain tensioner. The book wants you to use a tool to release the pressure off of the cam chain. I'm just going to be completely removing mine because I'm going to be ordering a replacement for it, because these tend to, the automatic tensioners tend to go bad throughout the lifetime, and I suspect this one for causing a slight rattling noise on the side of the engine. Based off what I searched, I'm pretty sure that's what's causing the issue. So regardless, because these fail anyway, I'm just going to be ordering an OEM version of this and replacing it. So right now I'm just going to be taking the whole thing off. But if you don't plan to replace yours, you can just unscrew this sealing bolt back here, and then there'll be a little thing that you can twist to relieve the pressure off the cam chain before you try to remove the camshaft. And actually, before I remove my tensioner, I'm going to be using this zip tie and putting it right through this hole on the cam sprocket and zip tying the cam chain onto the intake cam shaft so that it does not lose its place and I can keep the timing set correctly. I know that when I loosen the cam chain tensioner, this won't be slipping a tooth or anything like that. And I'm doing this on the intake side for mine because the exhaust side is going to be the only camshaft that I'm actually going to be removing, since the exhaust side was all in spec. And on the exhaust side, I'm going to be using this paint marker to just mark a line on the cam chain and the cam sprocket so that I know when I go to put that back, I can put it back in the correct spot. Now you can see I added my marks down here, so I should be able to use those when I'm putting everything back together now. And those marks, in addition to the zip ties, it should be pretty easy to keep the engine timed as it is right now. Alright, I just took my cam chain tensioner off, so now there's no tension on the chain, and now the next step is to remove the 2 bolts holding on this top chain guide. Looks healthy, pretty much no wear there. Okay, now we can go around and start breaking off the bolts holding on the camshaft holders, which is this 1, 2, and 3 right here. And then so you just want to make sure that as you're going around loosening these, you just want to break them off in crisscross pattern. So kind of just divide the way that you're breaking them loose, so you're not putting too much stress on any given point at one time. There we have the first lifter, or the first camshaft holder off, second camshaft holder, and the last camshaft holder is out. Now you should be able to just wiggle this camshaft out of place and up and out. Okay, so now that that exhaust cam is out, you can see we have access now to all of the lifters for the exhaust side. And the shims sit right underneath the lifter. So what we're going to do is take all these out. I'm going to sit them over there on the table and making sure to keep them in the same order that they were in here. And for these, you could just use a magnet of some sort and they should come right up. And you can see that the shim actually stayed inside of this one as well. Yeah, so if your magnet's strong enough, the shims will usually just stay right there at the top of the valve lifter. Okay, so now we're over at the table and we have all of our valve lifters laid out in the same order they came out in the engine in, from left to rightmost. And as you saw earlier, you can see that that's where the shim seat is in the valve lifter. And then these basically just sit in there. So what you're going to want to do is take all your things out, and then once you have them out, take the shims out of the valve bucket, and if it's not in the valve bucket, it's still on the bike, take them out of the bike. You can just use a magnet to pull them out. It's pretty easy to get all these. And the thing that we're going to do now is we're going to take each shim, and you'll see that they have a small number marked on them. This is 195. So what you're actually supposed to do is get a caliper of some kind. So this is, I have a digital one here, and you're going to use this measurement to see how thick these actually are, because after these wear over time, that number might not be so accurate. So if we put that in, that says 1.96, and the number on here was 195, so 0.01 off. And these, I mean, this is, I got this on Amazon. It's never going to be perfect, but as you can see, it's still pretty true to what that says. So I'm going to go through and measure each one of these, and I'm going to write that number down, whatever measurement I get from here. Okay, so I just finished taking all my measurements, and as you can see, I have everything calculated out here on the right-hand side. So basically, this is a pretty simple formula that is given in the book, and if you look up online, it's pretty easy to find. So basically what you want to do is you want to take, I have all these all marked out from 1 through 8, left to right. So you want to take your measured valve clearance while everything was installed on the bike. So remember, if I showed you, mine was very close on every single one, between 0.21 and 0.22. So those are all the measured clearances for the related valves. And then you want to subtract the desired clearance, which for the exhaust side was 0.3 millimeters. So as you can see, I did that here. So you take that calculation, and then you add the measure thickness of the actual valve shim that you took off the bike, and you put it right here. And then once you make that calculation, and it will print out the number and it'll print out the value of the new shim that you need to buy. So when I was going through making my measurements, I actually didn't see anywhere on all these shims themselves. So that means, like the printed out numbers, this one says 195. I measured it at 195. I measured it with both my digital caliper. This one seemed to be like a mil over every, or 0.01 mils over every time. So then I also double checked all the numbers with my micrometer, and this seemed to be a little more accurate, but they both gave me around the same measurements, which was the face value. So I didn't actually see any wear on any of the shims. So all the numbers that I wrote down in this column are pretty much all the numbers that are on the face of the shim. But and you know, that's just my example. You might actually have wear on your shim, so don't just trust the face numbers. Remember to actually measure it either with a caliper or a micrometer or something, just so you know the actual thickness, not just what's printed on there. So you're gonna use that here for your calculation, and then yeah, like I said, you'll have on the right hand side when you're done the value for the new shim thickness that you need to buy. And so these are, as you can see, they're all like different numbers, like 0.86, 1.86, 1.83, 1.84, 1.81. So you're not going to be able to find shim thicknesses that are the exact these exact numbers, because they only come in certain denominations. So basically, what you want to do is you want to find the closest one that you can to the number that you calculated that you need. That'll get you closest to what the expected clearance should be. So for example, if this is calculating for a 0.30, but the only new shim I'm able to find is a 1.85, then the measured clearance after I put the new shim, the new 1.85 shim on, would be, it should be like what, 0.29. But that gives you an idea. At least that'll be within the specification of plus or minus 0.3. So that's fine. So just whenever you get your new numbers calculated, go ahead and look on whatever website you're going to buy your new shims from, and just see what denomination they have that's closest to the number that you calculated yourself needing, and then do the new calculation and see what that'll give you. And you'll want to do, if there's like one close above or below, you just want to do whichever one is closest in the specification range. So that'll be your new shim to order. So now that I have all this information here, I'm going to go ahead and order my shims because that is the next thing I need to complete this job. Okay, so all my new shims have arrived. And as you can see, I've laid them out all in sequence here on the top, and the old ones are still on the bottom. Still keeping everything in order where I know where everything is. And as you can see, this one's missing. So after you do your calculations, you might get lucky and you might be able to actually reuse one of your older shim sizes. And I did get lucky and I was able to use this one, I think it's 192 was the one that was right there. So I only ended up having to order 7 of them. I can't remember the name of the website I got them on, but these were all like $2, like around $2 for all the new ones for each one. So I think for all of them, it wasn't that much money. But I'll put the link to the website down below. I think initially I was looking at Partzilla or something, and they were asking like $11 per shim, which would have been like 70 something bucks. So that was kind of ridiculous. So I'm glad I found it. I think it was like Mountain MTV, ATV, something. I don't know. I'll put the link in below and you can check it out there. But now that I've got all these laid out from 1 through 8, I'm now going to go ahead and start putting everything back together so we can get everything tightened down, get the cam back in, and then check the clearances to make sure that we're looking good on the exhaust side now. All right, so I tried to get you the best angle I could so you can see what I'm doing here. But you see we have valves 1 through 8 on the exhaust side, and this is my shim for valve 1. Be very careful not to drop any of these into the engine while I'm putting them back in. But as you can see, these little spaces right there are where these seat into. So I'm just going to go ahead and put all those back in now. All right, as you can see, we have all of our new shims in place. Now that we have those in, we can go ahead and put the valve lifters back in as well, in the same order that we took them out in. The book also calls for you to add some new oil around the lifters before you put them back in there. So I just dipped my finger in some oil and gave it a nice little coat, as you can see there. I'm gonna do that for each one and put them back. All right, so I got all the lifters installed. Now I'm just going to wipe down all these journals that the cam sits on, and then reapply some oil to them. All right, now I'm gonna throw the camshaft back in here and try to get it aligned with those marks that I made previously. All right, that took some fiddling, but I was able to see, as you can see, get those marks lined up again, those 2 white marks I made, and these zip ties are still on this side. So that means that the distance in between these should be fine. And also, let me see if I can get a good angle. I think you can see this timing mark is still horizontal here. And let me check the other one. Yes, that one is also horizontal. So I think we're looking good so far. All right, for the cam holders now, I got 8 of these new washers that go on the inside bolts. And I also got 4 of these new O-rings that go down under here. So it's 1, 2, and then there's another 2 on here. So with all that new hardware, I'm gonna go ahead and swap everything over, and I'm gonna get these installed on the bike. All right, now these are all snugged up. Now it's time to torque them down. And it's pretty easy to get the sequence right on this because all of the numbers are printed out on the cam holders too. So now we can put the top chain guide back on. Oh, and by the way, the torque spec on these bolts were 9 foot-pounds for all of them. And then these ones don't have a torque spec, it just says tighten them down. So I'm just gonna snug them up, not too crazy. Now I'm going to install my brand new cam chain tensioner down here. Also don't want to forget the new gasket for that. Now we can remove this little clip that is holding the, that is keeping the piston retracted. And now we can put this screw that goes on the back of here back on. Okay, now that everything is pretty much back together, there's tension on the chain, everything's torqued down. Now we're going to go back down here to the crankshaft bolt, and we're going to spin the whole engine around a couple times and and then we're going to triple check our timing, make sure everything is fine. And I'm just checking to make sure everything feels smooth and I don't feel or hear anything colliding inside the engine. And so far it feels fine. All right, now I'm gonna set it back to top dead center here. And that looks perfect. So I'll show you what I'm checking for here, just like in the beginning of the video. You can see that there are, a little too much light. You can see, let me get a little closer. You can see there are 2 notches, I think you can see now. So one there and one right there. So intake and exhaust, and they are both still lined up with each other right here, which is good. So if I turn this around another 180 degrees, these should be on opposing sides, which I'll check right now. All right, so I spun the engine around another 360 degrees, sorry. And you can see now the intake side, the little notch is aligned here. On this side it's a little hard to see, but you can kind of tell that the little exhaust symbol is right there, and the notch is underneath, and it's also lined up here. So we are still in time and everything is looking good. Okay, so now what I have to do, the engine's at top dead center, which is for checking the valve clearance on, I think, cylinder 1 and 2, or cylinder 1 and 3, sorry, for the intake side. So just, you can rewind the video back to when we checked it the first time, and it will be the same exact procedure, starting from top dead center, checking 1 and 3 on the intake, and then spinning it, I believe it's 90 degrees to check the ones on the exhaust side, and then like another 180 degrees to check the other ones on the exhaust side, because it goes from intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust. So I'm just going to skip the intake and just do the exhaust, but just make sure you have your engine in the correct timing position before you recheck any of your values if you're doing either intake or exhaust or both sides. Whew. All right, guys, so I'm not gonna lie, that was a lot of work. It took a while for me to get to this point and finally be done with everything. Everything is back together now though, and I just did the remeasurements on the exhaust side, and all the measurements are checking out. So now I got them all written down here again, my little turn up, and they are now ranging from 0.29, which is the smallest clearance, to 0.31, which is the biggest, and the spec is 0.3 plus or minus 3. So we're well within the range, almost perfectly in the middle now, which is fantastic. Before we were very, very small, not enough clearance. So I'm glad it worked out. The engine is still in time. I turned over a couple revolutions. One thing I did notice, after I put everything back together, I turned it over a little bit manually, and then I checked the clearances, and they seemed like they were still a little bit on the smaller side, like 0.25. But then I just turned it over manually a couple more times, a couple more full rotations to let everything settle. And then I remeasured with my feeler gauges, and then I got the correct measurements that you see here now. And I even triple checked them just to make sure everything was fine, and they came out the same again. So I would say that job was a success. If you're still watching the video to this point, thank you so much. I hope that either you're just watching it for fun or you're watching it and doing your own bike. If you are, I hope everything works out well. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. I'll try to get to them. But if you like the video so far, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, especially if you're interested in the rest of the bike build. I'm not sure what I'll be tackling next, but it will be something. As you can see, I have a lot of work left on this bike. I have a bunch of new parts for it. You can see there are, I don't know if you can see, they're all over there on the table. But I'll be tackling this all sooner than later. I'm trying to make this project not drag out too long. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this video. I'm not sure how long it's going to be. I feel like it's probably going to be a long one. But if you stay to this point, thank you again so much. And I hope you subscribe to keep coming back and watching the rest of my videos. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next video.